and welcome to the latest edition of the Liquid Weekly podcast. I say latest edition because I have no idea what episode this is. Taylor is the one who is keeping us all in line. Today we're excited to have not only our co-host Taylor Page, but also the infamous Trudy MacNabb to talk about Metaobjects and all sorts of Shopify things. So let's see if I can...
The sound
fix? Trudy! Welcome!
That was so long.
I know! We have
end.
no idea what we're doing here. Anyway, how are you today, Trudy?
I'm well. How are you?
We're good. We're barely hanging on there, but I love your background wherever you're at. That looks like a very cozy
Thank
place.
you. It's just my apartment. It's just like the nice exposed brick. Although it's more annoying sometimes because it's very dusty. I have to sweep like every day.
Yeah. I was hoping it was something more because like home sweet home. Hopefully you're not living at an office setting. So yes, that's nice. Good.
Yeah.
Now, are you in the Toronto area? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I don't know if you recall, we actually met in Toronto in 2019.
Oh, at
Shopify.
Unite, maybe?
Yeah, I came to your talk on Vue.js. And
She always has to rub it in.
Well, no, because it's like that was a great time. I'm really glad I went because I got to meet you.
Remember, Taylor, where you didn't get to go to any of these? Yeah.
Okay. I spent my whole trip looking for beaver tail because I was told that was like a really cool thing. And so I spent one day just walking along the waterfront until I found a stand that sold it. And it was pretty good.
Yeah. I feel like, you get them on the waterfront because it's touristy, but it's not really like a Toronto thing. Like it's like a Canada thing, but not specifically so much in Toronto.
Is that like one of those things where it's not actually beaver tail? They just call it beaver tail? Or is it
no, it's real beaver tail, Taylor.
Yeah, it's a Canadian.
It's like you can eat that? What?
It's very woody. No, it was like it was like a flatbread kind of
it's
sweet
like a pastry
thing with a bunch of toppings on it.
It's like in
like
American pastries, it'd be like Oh, I was gonna say bear claw, but elephant ear.
Yeah, bear claw. I feel like there's it's like donut adjacent, like deep fried dough.
Anything donut adjacent is good. So
it was a lovely city and excellent confections. So
yeah, where are you, Karl?
I'm in Central Ohio.
Okay.
I'm from Michigan originally, but no, it's actually quite nice here. I'm in Columbus, and it's a big city. It's grown a lot, and lots of exciting things to do here. Not that I get to do any of them, having 3 youngish kids at home, but in theory, we could be having lots of fun. So.
And I'm just an hour north, basically, of Karl in a little itty-bitty town that most people have never heard of. Except they do know that we have a Starbucks in the Oasis gas station off Highway 71. So
fancy.
Like, I'm from Ashland. Oh, where's that? Oh, the Oasis gas station off 71. Oh, yeah. Like, all right.
Nice.
It's our claim to fame.
So what have you guys been working on this week? We'd love to get kicked off just by hearing about... Oh, not working, I'm sorry. What's going on in your life? Like, what's a cool story or any anecdote you want to share from your week?
I'm planning to learn how to drive because I just got my G1, which is basically like the learner's permit here.
Nice.
So is it not? I've seen a couple of people online talking about getting their learner's permit. Is that not not as common up north or whatever, that y'all don't like just get driver's licenses? Or
I mean, I would say Toronto specifically. Like it's more common for people not to get driver's license. Everywhere else you have to drive.
Because you have like really good public transportation and stuff otherwise? Or I come from a place that's relatively rural. Everyone has to get their license.
She just
because
stays
you
at
can't
home.
Really walk
she doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. That's cool too.
Yeah,
Look how cozy it is.
We have decent public transit. I feel like it's dropped off in the sense that when I was young it was good, but they haven't really updated it. But now they are. I guess it's okay. But I bike everywhere.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I just recently got into cycling because of doing a triathlon, and it is brutal if I had to do that every single day. So I assume maybe you're just used to it because you're used to biking everywhere, but I had to build up muscles. Apparently there's different muscles you don't use if you've
that is true.
bicycle,
I feel like
cycle.
that with ice skating. Like every year I'm like, oh, these ice skating muscles have atrophied.
That's exciting.
Awesome.
So living in a big city like that, like how do you go from zero to actually being out the road and doing stuff? Because where I'm from, you go find quiet places and do easy stuff, but there's no quiet place.
It's true. I know. So that's why I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm going to go to a driving school for sure because I need a professional.
Nice.
But I don't know. But then a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you could go outside of the city. Like sometimes people go outside of the city." I'm like, I think that might be a good idea just to start
Are you nervous?
because I am very nervous.
Yeah.
But it's funny because people are like, I can't believe you bike everywhere. It's like a think about people just biking in New York City, right? Like it's just traffic all the time and like people
Mhm.
like whatever. And people are like, I can't believe you're afraid of driving but not biking everywhere. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just used to it, I guess. So I feel like biking everywhere makes me less afraid of driving. But I can't kill anybody on a bike, but I could accidentally.
There's probably ways, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. If I really tried, but it's a
If I
lot
get
harder.
going downhill, good enough. I don't know. I've had a couple of close encounters with having to stop very fast, and I'm a large American trying to stop on a bicycle. So yeah, I could do some pretty serious damage. Maybe not you, but I definitely could.
Oh, congratulations. That's quite the achievement to be
Yeah, that's
taking
awesome.
that step. So,
Thank you.
all gas, no brakes, Trudy. That's the motto here. Keep that in mind when you're learning to drive.
Do
Okay.
not listen to Carl.
That's probably safe.
Taylor, what have you been up to this week?
So maybe the opposite. I did a lot of driving this past weekend. So I had to go down to North Carolina. My mom is staying with us for a little bit, and so she's in the process of selling her house and all this other stuff. So she's going to stay with us for a little bit, and so I had to drive this truck pulling a trailer out of the mountains in North Carolina and Tennessee, which was quite harrowing in some instances. And so it's just been a minute since I've had to do that. So it's like this big full size trailer. Some of the roads are just barely big enough for a car, two cars passing each other as it is. And so I flew down on Saturday, and then I drove all day on Sunday to get back to Ohio. So no issues.
Thanks.
And so that was a lot of fun. That was in the personal life. That's kind of been the big thing. And then just same as you, got two small kids. One of my daughters doing she's 7 and she's doing a lot of cheerleading stuff right now, so she gets to cheer at the big Friday night high school football game tonight. So she's quite excited. She went to a cheer camp for it. So that's what's been going on my end. Driving
That's
truck and
so
trailers
critical
and
detail.
cheer camp. Yeah.
You skipped
but-
the critical detail of who loaded the truck.
Oh well, me. That's
Okay, that seems worse than driving, in my opinion.
That's-
Like,
Oh no, like I'm good with. Well, thankfully we didn't have a ton of stuff, so it was actually just a pickup truck.
Oh,
My
okay.
mom, most of her stuff was already like in storage, so it was more about, that. And I trailered up a motorcycle. My dad had a motorcycle. He's been gone for some time now, and mom had it. But now I actually get to keep my dad's motorcycle, so that's a lot of fun. So I had to load that, and that was another reason why I was kind of like, driving so carefully, right? Had to make sure this
Yeah.
motorcycle made it all back in one piece
okay.
too. So
I was envisioning you in some like 16-foot long Penske U-Haul truck or something, but
no,
still,
thankfully,
sounds terrible.
yeah, no. She's not. My mom's not moving in. She's just staying with us for the month, kind of type thing. But she's gonna go visit my other brother
That's what you
in
think.
Pennsylvania next month, and right, yeah, she's starting to get mail here, so I'm kind of concerned.
Oh man.
What about
Well,
you,
I had-
man?
a
You
little
had
adventure,
a pretty,
yeah.
pretty crazy deal, right?
Well, not crazy, but okay. So, guys, here's my thing. I think the reason I like computers is because I like fixing things. And when I first had a computer in the house, I kept breaking it, trying to get games working on it. It was my dad's work computer, so I had to fix it. And I like fixing things, so I think it's how I got into technology. If it weren't for computers, I'd probably be a mechanic or carpenter or something. But anyway, so one of the things I've gotten into this summer is watching HVAC repair videos. Because every time I've had an issue with our
And you
furnace
call
air
it
conditioner,
HVAC?
yeah, heating. What's the V
That,
for?
I'm just asking because we would call it HVAC.
Everybody
Oh,
calls
HVAC.
it HVAC. I've never
Okay.
heard anybody say HVAC.
Okay, all right.
So, how many of these
You know what?
movies have you watched, Carl? This
Let's just go. As I was saying, I've been watching HVAC videos because I feel like, it's a complex system, but if you understand the basics, 90% of what goes wrong is usually with the basics. I'd rather fix it myself than have to pay to have someone come out. Plus, I enjoy the process. So, my wife turned the air conditioner on the other day because it was like 87 degrees in Columbus, Ohio in October, which that's a whole nother thing. And it gets hot upstairs for the kids. And then I'm sitting there working. They had left the house. I'm like, it's not getting any cooler. It's like 6 o'clock at night. Like, what's going on? I realized the outside unit, the air handler, and the compressor, condenser, all that, it's not running at all. It's like, oh, that seems like a problem. So then I'm like, it's time for me to fix the air conditioner. This is what I've been born for. I've been, training for this all summer. So like, all right, first thing I'm going to need is my multimeter. So I went out and got my multimeter, which I barely know how to use. Apparently I didn't know how to use it. You'll see in the story. I gotta keep this short, don't I? Okay, so long story short, I thought it was the thermostat. In the process of trying to debug that, I ended up blowing a fuse in the furnace at like 9:50 at night. And then I'm like, oh crap, so now everything's broken. It's supposed to get cold this weekend, so I run out to Home Depot right before it closes, get a new fuse, buy a new thermostat, come home, fix the fuse, put the new thermostat on, thinking that will fix it. Doesn't fix it. So now I've got a brand new thermostat that I don't need. And then I finally trace it down to at the board in the furnace, it's supposed to send the signal over the thermostat wire to the air handler unit, telling it to close the contactor and spin up the compressor. I see that voltage at the furnace. I go out to the compressor, and I'm not seeing the voltage. I'm like, okay, so it's got to be like a loose connection somewhere. So I'm checking all like the wire nuts and everything. Nothing seems to be doing it. Finally, I check one more in the furnace, and it's totally loose. Like, I take the wire nut off, and the two wires are just sitting there like this. They didn't even twist them when they installed it. It's like, oh, that's obviously it. Like, okay, I've spent like 6 hours on this by now. Like, a couple of that night, a couple in the morning. I really got to get to work. It's like, well, finally, I've got it all done. I put the nuts back on, close everything up, go to turn it on. Nothing. Like, what is going on? So I'm like, I'm so defeated at this point. I just gave up, and I called them to come out to look at it because I just can't spend any more time on it. And it was totally the thermostat wire. Turns out there was a bug or a rodent or something that got into the wall and chewed this part of the wire that you couldn't see. And so what they ended up doing, they tapped it right before it left the house, read the voltage, realized that there's something between the wall and the outside where it had gone bad. And so they just replaced the wire. So if I had known that, 30 minutes, I could have done that and saved myself a service call. But so close. But anyway, that was my adventure.
That's so
You came
funny.
close, you tried.
I have to say, so the HVAC thing just reminded me, like, I used to be a mainframe system programmer, and I worked on this system called KICS, Customer Information Control System. And we would have like conferences, and I would meet like Americans, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I work on CICS. And I was like, I've never heard of that. And later I was like, oh, it's KICS. Like, it's the same thing. We just call it KICS, and they call it CICS.
Yeah. That's funny. We Americans, what can we do? It's not like we
So
say
I thought maybe it was an
something.
American thing to say HVAC.
I don't know. I think maybe
It
like
is
an
not.
educated American thing, Taylor. I don't know.
Perhaps. Yeah, maybe.
All right. Well, that's way more that people really probably care to know about our lives. So let's transition now to what's going on in the Shopify community, because ostensibly we're here to talk about Shopify. So Taylor, you dug some dirt and found some interesting things. Want to hit on some highlights that you've been sensing on the zeitgeist?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here because I think we were talking about a couple of these things. I just wanted to showcase so some exciting stuff just in the community in case people haven't seen this. So this was something that was new and interesting that Shopify just pushed out. So it's using AI, machine learning type stuff or whatever, and the idea is that you can drop in something in here, a product image, and it'll replace the background. So it's really neat. I actually wanted to showcase an example of a product, but I thought it would be better, and I took the liberty of just basically doing some background replacements for you guys. So if you need some new profile images here, feel free. But the idea is you can just, drop an image and it'll just replace the background based on a couple of prompts. So it's pretty handy here. But I wanted to show you what that looks like in the outset here. So if you need to replace these, I've got these available for y'all. I'll drop you the link. But really, really cool. It takes a little bit of time kind of type thing. So you can see here's all of your fun images. But I probably don't want to go through here. Oh, I was trying to do one. You guys can see all of this stuff. Burp, 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 burp. Oh, man. I should have had one locked and ready to go kind of type thing, but you can just drop this image in here. We'll do Karl's and then just leave this stuff in here. You hit generate. Okay. And then what it'll do is it just goes in and it snags like this background. It takes a minute, so we're going to pop back to this probably. But it'll give us some images based on these prompts here. It's pretty neat.
Oh.
We'll just load up here, but kind of show you what that looks like. So, but we'll move on.
Really
we'll
cool.
pop back. Yeah. So this is great for products. So if people, just maybe taking a picture on their phone with a background of like a coffee mug or something like that, where you can give it like a nice clean white background, or maybe put it in in a cafeteria setting or something like that, make it more realistic. It's really neat for that kind of type stuff. But I'll give it a second here. I'll move on to the next thing as well. So Liam Griffin, anybody who's not following him should be over here, just posted recently being able to edit metafield values from the theme editor, which is awesome. And this is really relevant because we're talking about Metaobjects today. So this is supported only currently through Metaobject pages and templates at the moment. So Trudy, I'm not sure if you've been able to play around with this yet, but in case you haven't, that is new as of just a couple weeks ago here.
Yeah, I just tried it out for a second just to see how it is, and it's very exciting because I feel like the whole thing with meta objects and meta fields is kind of confusing, and like you have to go to so many places that it like being able to do it there makes a big difference, especially for merchants.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, another real quick one, and this is kind of almost at changelog related, but just the ability to now do some admin action extensions just directly in here. So for things like products and customers and orders, you'll be able to just directly drop in here for more actions. Folks can build this into their app specifically. So maybe if you're, I don't know if you've saw that update and you've got some ideas for design packs coming up for the future. I don't know if you'd want necessarily anything like direct from products. I think this will be really helpful for a lot of folks. Provided it's useful as well. But last and not least, there's been a whole bunch of stuff going on with DMCA takedowns. I don't know if y'all have seen that. Jack Colpin had posted, he's got a couple of Shopify apps, but he's also got a shop. So it's just this process. And, so thankfully Toby has responded that he's going to be looking into it kind of type thing. But it originated from a merchant who talked about a lot of back and forth issues with just DMCA, I can't even say it. Takedowns, just like the current process is
Dimka.
HVAC, HVAC. So anyways, that's something that's interesting. I don't know if that's on y'all's radar or y'all have had that issue happen with merchants where basically these DMCA takedowns or whatever, they're pretty aggressive. So it can actually, pull down, entire stores basically to where people are losing sales, and there's a pretty long lag in the back and forth, like up to 2 weeks before, they can basically get this resolved. And so this is pretty tough for some folks. And so just something to be aware of or mindful of.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how people can use something that's supposed to protect people as like a weapon against people.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, because that's kind of what happened here. The 10 to 14 review period review period. And then after so many, I'm scrolling down here, whatever, basically this happened enough times though that like they just closed down a shop, so that's pretty tough, like the process for that. And again, the sheer number of, accounts that Shopify is working with, obviously there needs to be some system in place here. It just seems like right now folks are finding ways to abuse this system to kind of take out their competitors essentially.
It almost feels like too, like Shopify's policy, I don't know, almost no context on this, but instead of taking it down right away, like during the review period, shouldn't you just leave the store up? I mean, otherwise you're just assuming that the person is guilty before you actually even review the order.
Guilty until proven innocent is kind of the thing, is kind of the approach to this. So hopefully they come up with something for that. But in lighter news, bam! Here's our new AI-generated backgrounds.
That was worth waiting for.
Yeah, should be excited.
I think we are very excited.
All right, so yeah, I'll send these to you, Karl, so that way you can use these here in the future. I expect to see these up on all the social media handles here. So.
Yeah, I'm all over the socials.
I've been using AI in Canva to like create fake products altogether because it's so hard. Like for say design packs, just like the example pages, and I'm like, I just need a fake product. It's not a real product.
How do you do that in Canva? That's super interesting to me. Maybe we can go over that afterwards. But I'm interested in this, like the general walkthrough.
I just give it a prompt like flat lay of jeans or something, and then.
Interesting.
My one conspiracy theory though is that like I'll do like any number of things and it'll come up with a thing, but like it doesn't know what mascara is. And I feel like this is a funny thing because I feel like men, when I ask, like men who know anything about makeup, but like a lot of men don't know what mascara is. Like I feel like mascara is like a mystery somehow.
Now, that's the stuff you
But,
put
I mean,
on
I
your
know what it
eyelashes
is,
or around
but-
your eyes.
Eyelashes.
Eyelashes, okay.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah.
Why don't they just
So
call it
wait, so
eyelash paint?
How do you do this in Canva? What prompt is this in Canva? Is this under an element or something?
Let
or-
me look. I'm
I'm
gonna
super
look.
You
interested.
piqued Taylor's interest now.
Oh, this is okay. So under elements, if you're using Canva, well, I feel like this is super relevant for people. I see this all the time when creating themes or apps where people want to do demos and they're trying to like reach out to merchants. Like that's usually the best thing to do, right? Reach out to a merchant,
Yeah.
feature their products and stuff. But
Yeah.
using AI to generate products, then you wouldn't even have to like worry about that. So that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
I feel like okay. Elements maybe is it? Oh yeah, generate your own.
This is super cool.
And then there's a prompt, and it's like I don't know. I'm just writing flat lay
Try an
of
example. Create your image.
outfit, something.
This is cool. This is a little spot for Canva here, apparently.
Yeah. Hey, Canva, we do accept
Yeah.
sponsorships, so give us a call.
It's cool. This is really neat.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a lot of this AI stuff is super interesting. Like, yeah, we've talked about we need a whole nother episode, so we'll slot this for another time. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, but
No,
this,
but it
this
has
is pretty
made my
cool.
life a bit easier for making like fake collections and like fake things.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
Trudy,
awesome.
You shot yourself in the foot. This totally could have been your pick of the week because I don't see one on here for you. So
Um,
you have to come up with something else while we talk.
We'll cut out the snippet and like just move it to the
Put it over
end.
there. That's right. All right, one final section before we get in. Transition music here. We're transitioning now. All right, one final thing before we get to the main course of the podcasting meal. I guess that's a weird metaphor. What are you guys working on Shopify related this week? And then we'll get into talking about Metafields with Trudy.
well, one, I'm working on like a few client projects, but specifically I'm working on a new app, but I don't want to say too much about it.
Sure. Just that you're doing it, and we should all be
Yeah.
afraid because there's no way we could compete with Trudy. So, if you got an app with Shopify, be scared. She's coming for you, and
You should be worried.
that's cool.
Because
Exciting.
from
What
quality of design packs, but now
I know you can't talk about what it
Something
does,
else.
but what tech stack you're going with?
Well, so this Rails backend, React front end.
Rails. Nice.
Yeah, I'm a Rails
This is great
girl.
because I have more and more
Me
people
too.
to ask all of my Rails questions when I get stuck. I tried to learn Rails on a project,
Yeah.
and I realized it's just been too long that I've messed around with Rails at all, and found I was far too deep to be able to get done what I wanted to get done. So
Yeah, and I feel
now have more
like
people to ask.
even like since like Design Packs app versus like this new app, it's like the architecture is like so different. Not like 100%, but like it's very different because I'm using
Yeah.
like this like the CLI now, and it's just like interesting. I'm using
Oh.
Docker, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I
Ooh,
mean, I guess
yeah.
it's fine.
Well,
thought
and that was
Docker
something that
was-
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just thought Docker was an app to drain my laptop's battery. That's the only thing I see it useful
Yeah.
for. So
Yeah. I mean, it's probably good. I just don't know enough about it, and then I get frustrated.
Yeah. Well, that was I think the difficulty that I ran into, which is great if you're like more of a JavaScript dev, and a lot of the stuff with the CLI and the docs, everything's kind of geared that way, right? But with the Rails stuff or whatever, there is like a repo that I was using kind of type thing. But other than that, it's kind of hard to get a lot of like good examples or
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like there's a lot of like good help, and there were a lot of like edge cases too. Even working with another Rails dev at the time, even with the starter or what have you, there was an issue with when you're spinning up, this Rails app or whatever that you're running for Shopify here, and so it's got the new Shopify app gem and all this other stuff, right? But it didn't have something in place at the time for the payment process, where if you're just trying to do it in a dev environment where it's like, okay, this person's paid, so like they can access the app if you're planning to charge for the app, right? So you kind of had to do this weird process. So he submitted a PR and stuff to get like that built in or whatever, because he's way smarter than me, with the person that I was working with. But I was just like, this doesn't feel like
That's
it's very
true.
fleshed out, for
Yeah,
all
like
of
I
this,
feel like specifically with the payment, I'm like, I could figure out how to do it, but I want to know the way that they expect me to do it. Like, what's the
Right.
intention? Like, what's the right way to do it, and not try to like figure out some random way that my brain works. Like I want like a random thing. But I have to say like the Shopify partner Slack was very helpful because I was like chatted with a bunch of people to be like, what's
Good.
going on?
Yeah, I love the partner Slack. I know
Yeah.
that there's the Discord and that's what they're really pumping right now, but I find so much value in the Slack.
Yeah. I also just don't like Discord. Like I don't like the
don't either.
interface.
Me neither.
I don't know
don't.
why.
It's way too noisy.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Trudy, I'd love to talk to you more about that sometime because I am a Rubyist at heart. And my big thing
Yes.
is I try to avoid front-end JavaScript frameworks because I feel like they change so frequently. So I would love to explore more about why you chose to go with React as opposed to trying to stick with some kind of server-side rendering or even Hotwire. But
Well, I just do React because I do Polaris, and that's React.
okay. There you go.
And also now I feel like React's been around for a long enough time that it's kind of like matured, and I do like it. I like Vue.js and React. Those are the two I'll go for. But
Sure. How about you, Taylor? What have you been working on? Something about checkout extension, blah, blah, blah.
Blah blah blah. Yeah, checkout extensions has kind of been what I've been in on lately. Just a front end dev trying to figure out how to do this app type stuff or whatever. And so thankfully, like there's some good docs and people that are super helpful in the community as well. So I've been migrating a handful of clients who have checkout.liquid customization. So they're Plus clients doing checkout.liquid stuff, and so just building some custom extensions, only checkout extensions for them. So stuff like upsell at checkout, banners, did a cart note kind of type thing or whatever for another, so that way people can update, their cart note at checkout kind of type thing. So
Check you
stuff
out,
like that. Yeah, it's been kind of fun. Just trying to like figure stuff out kind of type thing. And I have found like the need. I've for the most part working with Shopify themes, I do whatever I can not to introduce new libraries, even if it's stuff I like to work with. But because of that, I haven't like dove really that far into React and GraphQL in a long time. Like my profile site used to be like Next.js, and so I was relatively comfortable with that. But at a certain point, I was like, well, it makes sense. I'm a theme dev who relies a lot on theme customization, so I'm going to move even my, my profile site or whatever, portfolio site or whatever to Shopify theme, and just customize that a little bit just to do what I needed to do, kind of type thing. And so I'm just not in that world as much. So it's been fun to dig into it or whatever. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do.
That's cool. Well, I look forward to hearing more about it. I also was working on a checkout extension, but that has been put on hold by the import process from hell that I've been working on. So the best way, long story short, I have been doing all this work and I thought I had it done, and it was like 330,000 order records that I imported from BigCommerce into Shopify, and I wrote a Ruby script to help me with it. Along the way, there's a lot of like manual tweaking I had to do with records that failed to import for various reasons, and so I finally got it all done, and asked like, does this look good? And everyone was like, yeah, it looks good. At least that was my perception at the time, what they said. Fast forward to last week, and like, hey, this doesn't look good. I'm like, oh wait, what?
Oh no.
So now I'm redoing it all, and they're trying to go live here next week, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna take forever. So first of all, I had to fix like the issues that were missing, like just some of the fields and things that they wanted that needed massaging. And then it was this issue of like, I know how much work it was last time to fix all these manual things, so I'm trying to do in front like some work in the script to make that easier. But stuff's hard, like phone validation, email validation, those sort of things. Because the data is just garbage sometimes, right? It's like, why is there a 20-digit phone number? You're like, there's no such thing as a 20-digit phone number. But, should I try to salvage this information somehow? Is it in here, or is it just garbage? So the best analogy I've come up with for it is when you do this kind of work, because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to explain to the person who asked me to do this, like why it's taking so long, because it's taking a long time. It's like, look, it's like you got BigCommerce, and you got this beautiful high-res picture of what an order is. And then you export it, and you kind of get this fuzzy sort of 320 by 200 version of what the order is. And then you've got to take that and somehow reconstruct it back into that high-res version in Shopify. And it's just really hard to make up for the missing data and figure out how to connect the dots in a way that's meaningful. So that's kind of where I'm at this week.
Oof. I do not envy you.
We'll get there. But enough about that. Now let's get on to what people really want to hear. It's time to talk about Metaobjects with Trudy. Hi, Trudy.
Oh.
Yes. Hi.
We got lots of questions for you.
Yes. I want to hear your questions because I'm obsessed. Like when Metaobjects came out, I was like, I'm obsessed, and immediately started using them. So
I love that was your reaction, because my reaction was This feels like it can be everything, so I don't know what I can even use this for. Like, what is this? You know, like it's like, oh, this is super customizable and blah 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 blah. And I was like, this is awesome, but how?
My
What?
reaction
Like,
was, when did Facebook buy Shopify? That's new to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Well, I've been using Meta Fields for like ever. Like I
yeah.
feel like since and like they were so unuser friendly. Like it's try to like teach my clients how to use them, and like you only had a 255 string, like that was it. So that you'd be like, we'll use the product handle or like the variant handle, but then like if they spell something wrong, like it was so
Yes.
breakable. But I still have been using Meta Fields for so long. So when the new ones came out, I was like so excited, and then when the Meta Objects came out, I was like, this is like Christmas to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the old Metafield like URL hack is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Where,
yeah.
Like you're gonna like, I don't know why this isn't working. It's like, well, you misspelled like this one thing, and like you created this random metafield now that we're not gonna be able to access until you misspell it again.
Yeah, yeah.
So, based on what Taylor was saying, it's actually my first question, Trudy, is for those, like, just assume that someone's listening to this podcast who say maybe hasn't worked with meta objects yet or knows nothing about this stuff. Just, again, pretend that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
How would you explain to them in a very concise way what meta objects are and what some of the standard use cases are for those? Why should they even care?
Okay, so I guess so I'll start off. So a project that I did like right before Meta Fields or Meta Objects was came out was like, and I'm okay. One, I guess I love like a long product page. Like I love like a very customized long product page with like unique information per thing. And so I was working on this project, and there's like literally I think like 50 meta fields. Like there's so many meta fields, and it's like confusing. And every time they have to like add a new product, it's like they have to update 50 meta fields, which is
What's
like
an example? Like, what are the fields holding? What kind of information?
Well,
do they
okay,
need
a
50
bunch of
fields
like
for?
a bunch of images for like a gallery, and then we have like a video, and then there's like a PDF like product like download, and then like specs for each like product that's like different, right? So it's just like they add up over time, right? So it's like it's just like all these things that are unique to each product, or like even call outs that are unique to each product, or like sometimes like shipping notes that are different.
And even when you can, like when it came to Online Store 2.0, where it was native in the editor, you can only pin like 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And then also this product has Salindo, which is one of those, because it's like a furniture thing. So it's like one of those like viewers where you can like do a 360 of the product or whatever. And like that had like probably 5 meta fields associated with it and all of these things, right? So it's just like so many meta fields. And then like so as I was like kind of finishing up that project, they're like meta objects, and I was like, oh my god, this would have been so much easier with meta objects. And so given that context, I'll say why that project would be easier is like so I feel like the great idea is to think like a meta object is more like an object than like a field, which I guess their naming is good, because it's like an object is its own thing. It's not connected with anything. Where like meta fields are connected. Like think of a product as being an object and like a blog post as being an object. A meta object is also its own object. And for that reason, it's reusable, which is good. And then you connect the meta object through like the meta field on a product. So a meta object is its own thing, first of all. Like it's not connected to anything. It's not like whatever. It's its own thing. And then you can have like multiple meta fields on it. So like the way I would have set up this project had meta objects been available is I would have been like, okay, all the product specs are a meta object. All of the gallery photos are a meta object. So then I could just have like multiple things and whatever. And then for the product specs, say like there's a type of chair, all of the product specs are the same on that type of chair. So now I can just add that one meta. I just have to add the information one time, and then I just connect that meta object through like a meta field. But I can also just use that meta object on multiple products now. So it's like the management of it becomes easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you've got kind of like this difference, and I think that's why, because they are so flexible, I think it's hard to kind of grok like what's actually
Yeah.
happening. And so
Yeah.
and I think it was helpful in my mind when I started shifting to just like this concept of like custom data, right? And so like you mentioned, so a meta object is like we can make it like a collection of meta fields, but it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be because like it can
Yeah.
just be a static, standalone thing that can be then assigned to multiple products like you were
Yeah.
talking about. If they
Yeah.
have the same specs.
Yeah. The other thing that really annoyed me when they went over to these new meta fields, that like the more user-friendly ones that like merchants can add and do it themselves in the admin, is that
Mhm.
you could no longer loop through them, which I was like,
Mhm.
I was talking to somebody, they're like, why would you want to loop through them? I'm like, I want to loop through them all the time. And I'll like loop by namespace. So I'll be like like an FAQ namespace, and then I'll just loop through them all so that you can have like different numbers of FAQs on
Mhm.
like a product page, because maybe one has 5, maybe one has 3. But then when they came out with the meta fields, it's like, oh, you just have to make a meta field for each one and you can't loop through it anymore.
Yep. Mhm.
So I was like, so then that was one of the first things I also looked into meta objects. I'm like, okay, so you can loop through them. So now what I would do is I would make, so on another project, so the project I did right after the meta objects came out was like, I was like, I'm so excited for meta objects. And so they had like FAQs for each, mostly eat, it was a meat thing. So they had like pork, chicken, and beef. So the
Okay.
FAQs would be kind of different for each one.
Yeah.
And then they had a few specific ones per um like type of meat or whatever. But
Mhm.
so basically I made each FAQ like question answer as one meta object. And then I
Okay.
made a list of meta objects as the FAQs on the page. And then you can loop through them. So then you can have like
Nice.
5 on one page or 3 on another page. So that kind of fixed the looping problem, as making like each FAQ its own meta object and then making the FAQ list a list of meta objects, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's the list of meta objects thing. That's been, something that's been kicking my butt here lately with some of the things that I was trying to do too, because it's not super easy to access. But I think probably, and I know you were working on some of this, and I know I don't want to get too deep into the weeds with like probably early on, right? I think probably need to start with like the basic stuff first,
Yeah.
because like I said, I definitely have questions about that part because I struggled with it.
Yes.
But as far as I know, and I don't know if this is a good time too, you kind of had some kind of like the basics, and I know you're working on kind of like a blog post as well that we'll hopefully have linked up here in show notes and stuff by the time that this episode comes out. But I think because that's really helpful, like because we talked about like real big use case, like oh, there are all these like awesome things that we can use, but I think yeah, that's the hard part. A lot of people is the beginning parts
Yes.
of it, like how do I even get started? So maybe that's where we need to start too. Is like, well, how do I get started on meta fields?
It's true. And
Or
so
meta
I was
objects.
making,
I'm sorry, I
yeah,
can't even
meta
say it right.
objects. So I started doing like reading up about it because I feel like I've just like the whole time I've just been like playing around being like dot value, dot this, dot whatever. I was like, I have
You
no
jumped
idea
into
what's
the deep
happening.
end. You're just hacking through
Yeah.
stuff, like
Yeah, I'm just like, what happens when I do this? But then I started reading and I was like, okay, this makes sense. So I feel like there's like in the meta object universe, I realized there's like the service. I think that's what it's called. Wait, I just also ruined my tabs. Let me see. Yeah, there's like the meta object. Oh no, the meta object system,
Yeah.
which
Uh huh.
okay, I realize why they call it system is because it really is the meta object metadata, but I feel like that's too confusing to call it
Mm-hmm.
metadata, so they called it
That's fair.
system.
Yeah.
This is my theory.
We're getting lots of
Um,
new terminology here. So yeah,
yeah.
we're still all
So
on ramping to meta objects. Let's not introduce new.
yeah. So the meta object system is sort of like the metadata of the meta object, and so it's like the type of meta object,
Hmm.
or like the handle of the meta object, or the URL of the meta object. So that's like the system. So it's just like the metadata. And then you have like the meta object definition, which is like describing something. Like FAQ is the definition. And then there's the entries,
Hmm.
which are like the each individual meta object. And so then I was like, okay, this makes more sense. So then the dot values plural goes on the definition, and the dot value single goes um, on the
Instances.
instance, yeah, the single entry of it.
Hmm.
Um, and I know this maybe is confusing, but it's so it kind of it does make sense. And
Mhm.
and then if you want like the system data, like if you want to just grab like a meta object,
Mhm.
you have to grab it from the shop object. So that's where they live if you need
Mhm.
to. Because like I feel like with everything else, you just can have like the total object. You can just be like products dot like
Right.
whatever. So if you want like all of the meta objects or you want to like reference all of the meta objects, then um you'd be like shop dot meta objects. But then I realized, so for you, okay, so I think that when you were talking about, you were trying to do like a where clause or something for a specific type of meta object.
Well, and yeah, and this is where we were talking about this because when we brought Anne on, Anne introduced us to the where filter, which y'all are using in design packs, I think, in some instances with, some
Yeah.
custom sections that you're doing. And that was, I think that someone had suggested that, like, oh, hey, like, dummy, you just had Anne on an episode. Like, why don't you just use where, like she said to do? And I was like, okay, that's great. But I actually need a namespace to grab onto here where I can actually like escape
Yeah.
this, right? And so, but that's you're saying yes, this could have worked if you would have actually thought this through. So you could use this with shop the shop object. You can grab shop.meta objects, and then you could use a where filter then if you
You can't,
knew.
okay, I don't know if you
Okay,
can use a where filter, but you can
I'm
use a
like getting
dot.
excited.
So, no, I know.
Okay.
So to get, and I don't know if this is going to answer your question fully, but to get the, like, say, like, I have like a meta object called team member, like,
Uh-huh.
that's the definition. So
Yes.
if I wanted to get all the team member meta objects, like all the entries, I would be like shop.metaobjects.team member.
Okay.
Like you don't need a where clause. It just like that will just grab
That's
those
just all of them.
entries. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then if you have a variable, then obviously you could use like the square bracket.
Okay. So do we need, but we need a, like this, that runs in a for loop or that just gives you an automatic,
That
you know what I
would run.
mean? So for like for, member in shop.metaobjects.team members
Yeah. So dot
dot
values.
value. Values.
S.
See?
Yes. Dot values.
Ah.
That's the thing. I know. Because I was like, when do you use value versus values? Who knows? I just try and see what happens.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, and it makes sense, right? Because you're trying to grab them from like this, like
Yeah.
essentially it's a, you have like an array, right? Or a certain point, right? You've got
Yeah.
like this list of different objects, right? Array.
Yeah.
Like, for lack of a better term, that would be where we would want to call values instead of something that's actually defined would be the dot value.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay,
it's like
I
I'm
got it.
looking at
I
my code
think
right now. So it's like for I've just put for meta object, but it could be for anything, for team
right,
member
right.
in shop.metaobjects dot team member dot values. And then you have the system information available, right? So then you have like
Mm-hmm,
meta object dot system dot URL,
mm-hmm.
meta object dot member photo dot value. Um,
Yeah. Okay. So that's where we have to start using value is when we actually have that defined. Right.
yeah.
So that
So it's on
okay.
the instance. Like the entry of the meta object is
Mm-hmm.
value, and then the definition is values, and it's going to bring all of the entries.
Nice. Yeah, and that would be way simpler than what I ended up doing. So this is I'm going to go refactor some things here because I think that was what I ended up doing. And I know I think that was what I'd posted, and we'll post that in the show notes too. Was I had done I had seen this because I found this in a GitHub issue where someone like threw this out there where they're like, oh, use a reverse filter. So like you reverse the actual meta object values or whatever because you couldn't access them like a traditional array. Like, so there was no index value that you could like tap into if you wanted to like just showcase one at a time, which is what I was doing. I was trying to inject these customer testimonials into a collection like at random and allow the merchant basically to choose, well, how many, like, we're going to do, let's say every 7 products, like show a customer testimonial or whatever. And so I was like, great, meta objects, yay. And so I build all these out and then I'm like, I can't access any of these.
No,
And
it's
so
true.
it was, it took a little hacking to like figure that out. So that reverse, and then, oh shoot, I can't remember his name. And very helpful blog post that was in Liquid Weekly, so everyone can go back and read it. We'll reference the issue again. But the compact filter actually gives you the same output where you can reference this meta object array. If you have a list of meta objects, you can actually reference the index value instead. So that works for that. But I think since I do have access to the handle for the meta objects that I'd be looking for, I think like the way that you reference doing it, I think that would be easier for me to do anyways. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna go
I
back
know, but
and
it's
refactor
yeah,
this. So
I know that's the thing. It's not very like intuitive. And then okay, if
Mhm.
I want to share my screen, I could go. I'll go back to
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
that image that I sent you. I don't actually even have the code. Well, I have it. I have like so many snippets of code and so many like test themes that I'm like, I don't know what page it's on, but I could share like the thing. Wait, how do I? Let's see. Okay, so if you look at this screenshot, see it?
hmm Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
this is what killed me at the beginning because I'm just like just the single line test. And if you do just the meta field, you're like, oh, that's an array. That is not an array. You can't split it. You can't do anything on it. You can't like whatever. Like I was like so like looking at this first bit here. I
Yeah.
was like, and
Wait.
that's the thing. Like
So
this.
Trudy, for those that aren't seeing this but are listening to it, can you describe what you're showing?
Okay, so I just did like this thing that was like, "Hello world, is this working?" as like a list of single line text. So each one is like a single line,
So this
and
is
it
a meta object that has multiple meta fields that each one's a line of text.
yeah, like a single line
Okay.
text, which and then but each one is just one word, and then it gives you output that's like square bracket, and then like the word in like uh quotations and then a
hmm
comma and then the word in quotations a comma whatever it looks
Which this
exactly
just
like an
looks like
array.
an array. Right.
Yeah, it
So
just
why can't
looks
I reference this by index then?
yeah, you can't reference it by index. You can't split. If you split on it, it'll just give you like square bracket. Like it just doesn't do anything. It does not act like an array at all, which was like breaking my brain for so long. So for so long what I did is the second one, which was the metafield text filter, but
Yes.
then you can see that it does hello comma world comma whatever, but then the last one it adds an and. So what I was doing like splitting on the comma and then removing the and.
So you're having to do like multiple filters just to get
Yeah.
this to where you
Yeah.
Jeez.
And
So
then
wait, so this is a single meta object with you have five meta fields defined. Each one's a piece of text.
yeah, it's like a single line text list. So it's
Okay.
like a list of
Single line text meta field. And then
yeah.
that is a list of these single line text meta fields.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
That's
each one of
cool.
them is just one word. So hello world
Yeah.
is this
Yeah.
and working.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the metafield text filter puts it out, which is also what happens if you put a single line list in like the editor, like the if you add it in the editor, it'll give you this like comma comma comma, but then the last one has an and before it,
And
like it's like reading
like,
it
what are you
like it
doing there?
yeah. And you're like thanks.
These are
Um
liquid filters then.
sorry?
So these are liquid filters that you're using with the meta object.
Yes,
Yeah.
metafield underscore text is a metafield filter for liquid there. So you would reference that list, right, that you have,
Yeah.
and then you would have the what's that, the pipe,
Like
and
pipe,
then
yeah.
metafield underscore text. So that's the filter that you can run on it, which is, and I think that's the part sometimes it's confusing. So I don't know if I'm getting ahead here a little bit, but that's similar to or akin to instances where you would append dot value at the end too,
Yes,
right?
so dot value I think also returns no dot. So then I was playing around with dot value actually gives you something that you can loop over, but it has
Okay.
no spaces. It's just like the words, no spaces, no commas.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
that's like more. But that one acts like an array. So it's so
Right.
confusing. So yeah, I didn't include dot value here, but it's so I feel like this was actually
Mhm.
my biggest stumbling block, being like, how do I get the information in a manner that makes sense?
Right. hmm
And this is actually true for any list. So if you have like a list of images, another
Yes.
one that I stumbled with where you're like, why can't I just loop over the images
Yeah.
on the
List of
meta?
images, list of products is one, right? That's a
Yeah,
lot that comes in handy or whatever. And so yeah, okay.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Um, yeah, so that is that I think is like first and biggest stumbling block when accessing these things is like,
For
and I
sure.
didn't even know the metafield tag existed for so long.
Yeah, uh-huh. And where would you even use? And that's the thing at this point where I'm totally not even using the filters because I have found, dot value and dot values is where I want to be. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you've found instances where like it makes the most sense to use the filter instead. And even the difference between the two, as far as that goes, I'm gonna have to pull up the docs so that way I can talk someone into
So I have the docs pulled up. So because I just kept these open.
Perfect.
So like this meta object system, which is, again, this is sort of like what you can do.
Yeah. Okay.
But
so we're looking at the
meta object
meta
system
field docs.
is
it's sort of the meta data of the meta object.
right, and meta object system is relatively new as well, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing this in the docs really prior to a couple of weeks ago, and I want to say this was an update to the docs, but I don't know when that happened.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know when it happened, but I only recently learned about it. And then there's like the meta field tag, which again, I did not know about for so long. The weird thing about this is that the meta field tag returns like HTML, and it also returns with classes, which I find kind of funny. I mean, I guess maybe it's a little bit useful. Also, I feel like you kind of just have to reference the docs because it's chaotic what returns. Like they're just like
based on the type. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's just like we'll just return whatever, and it's not always what you think. Like I think it's like a bit chaotic that it just like the text returns this like text, but then the tag returns a list. It's not like intuitive in any way to me.
I would agree. Strongly.
Yeah, and then let's see, the meta and then the text again also returns whatever it decides. You're like, oh, it's the product title.
Like, here.
Yeah, you probably just have to reference this. But
in other instances, we're getting the GID to access or whatever, but here, we're just going to get a title. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I know, like not even the handle. That's another thing. I think I was confused because like just being used to like things like, I was like, oh, it'll give me the handle and then I can use the handle to grab the object. But it gives you the title, which is not useful for anything in coding.
Right. Thank you, I guess.
Yeah. You're like, can I handleize this? But that's not even like that's not bulletproof.
It's not accurate at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it is a little bit chaotic.
We will definitely link up all this in the show notes for people that are trying to follow along on audio or video kind of type thing. Because it's really helpful the docs are good, but like you said, I think that's the problem is maybe someone has already got this down, but I feel like you were one of the first people to really jump on and grasp meta objects, and the fact that you're even like, I have these docs up anytime that I'm looking at this stuff because you kind of have to reference it. So I think that's helpful for people to hear too, that we're still kind of fumbling through some of this stuff to get it all figured out. You need the docs up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think in general, like the most difficult part was like just walking in blind. Like I feel like I was just so excited that I was like, I'm willing to do this work. I feel like even with my like Code Shopify, my blog, I was like, I just have to like, I was just cobbling together information that I found on the internet, and I was like, I need to write this down because I'm not going to remember it. Now the docs are a lot better than they used to be, but still I feel like it's like the metafield tag, like I didn't even really know existed, and it's hard to look up something that you don't know exists.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I wish we had updates for, which sometimes they're really good about that. Sorry, Karl, I'm just jumping in there on that. But if we could get like a change log for when the docs get updated, or just a notice, like, hey, the docs got updated for this, that'd be great. But a lot of times it is up to like developer advocate type people, like Liam, to be like, hey, like this got updated, like go check this out or whatever. I wish there was some kind of hook in for that. I don't know if someone's figured that one out. Sorry, Karl.
But yeah, so I feel like the first step to like, and I feel like I've been doing meta objects for a long time, but now I feel like I have to do things a bunch of times before I start to grok like really what's happening. And yeah, I was like just chaotic. Also, sometimes I'm just like, I should be able to figure this out. Why can't I? Like,
I should be smart enough. Gosh dang it.
I can fix the HVAC. I can figure it out. I was just gonna say, if I was a good podcast host, I'd have Jesse McGinnis in the background to come on and answer all the questions. Because you were saying, Taylor, he's the guy that's in
Oh
charge of
yeah.
that over at Shopify, right?
Yeah,
So
he popped off on the Twitter thread that
yeah,
we were talking back and forth on. So
we,
hopefully
we
maybe
should
we
get
can
a
get some
response
insights
episode.
or
Yeah.
what's that?
Because, I agree with a lot of the statements you make, Trudy, especially when things just don't seem to make sense. Like, why is it returning title when it's not useful? It could be handled. It'd be very interesting to get an insider's perspective because, what I often would imagine is that they're in a difficult spot, either in terms of performance or in terms of other constraints that they have in the back end. That it's not like they didn't realize it would be useful for developers to have X, Y, and Z. It's just they couldn't, for whatever reason, make
It's
that
true.
happen.
And part of me is because most of the time I'm using Metaobjects, it's like I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for my merchants that I'm
For the
working
merchant,
for,
yeah.
or for people with design packs if I want to make like tutorials. Like I'm not going to be there to code stuff up. So I'm usually setting things up that are going to work through the editor, like the theme editor. And so I actually think that it makes sense if you think about it from a merchant perspective on the theme editor, that the product title would be the one that shows up there. So I think, I don't know, it seems like maybe the metafield text or the tag or whatever. No, it's the text. Well, at least in this case of like the single line test lists, it's the metafield text that shows up in the editor.
Yeah.
Not the list, which was annoying the first time because I wanted it to be a list of like, I wanted to be like a bullet point list. And I was like, why is it just not doing this? So then I had to like do custom code, which I literally just went over and then removed the and made it into a list like I did, like a maniac, apparently. But what can you do? But so I think that's the thing. It's like, are you thinking from a merchant perspective or from a developer perspective? It makes sense more like to be product title from a merchant perspective, but product handle from a developer perspective. But then I feel like I just wish there was like, this is, I think, with all docs, and I know it's really hard to do, but you're like, what was the intention? Like, what were you thinking when you built this?
Yeah.
Like, how did you want people to work with it? Because people will figure out new, like, interesting ways to work with it, but I like to know, like, what was your expectation?
Right. What's the intended use case before I actually go about breaking this?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It would be nice. So, Jesse, if you're watching this or listening to this, I would love to hear from you either in the comments live or we could get you on the show sometime. And because we do want to understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. But back to use cases, I feel like also because I was working on that meat site, initially, like my first thing was like recipes. Like this is such a great thing for recipes. And then I also just like, and they didn't even have at the time, they didn't even have the meta fields weren't available on blog posts, but I was like, whatever, we'll just do pages and then we can switch. Because that's the other thing is like, once you have the meta object created, you could just swap it. You could put it anywhere. So it's like reusable. Yeah. So I feel like that, like, it's a lot more to set up. And I feel like every time I set some up for a client, I'm like, I do it 3 times because I'm like, oh, I set it up wrong. I should do it like this. I should break it up and make a list rather than like whatever. So I feel like it's like the setting up of the meta field. It's like, measure twice, cut once or whatever. Like you want to like set it up properly. And that's going to probably take a few times to think about it. But then once you have it set up and once you have the information, then I think the management of the stores are going to be way easier.
Agreed. Yeah.
And they're just collections of field. Like, there's no logic in meta objects. So that's correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah. It's just the idea of custom data. So like it's just it's literally anything you
just
want.
A schema,
so
really.
Then trying to like figure out how to like narrow it down to what you want it to be.
Yeah, but so I have another example that I just did because I just played with the meta object template for the first time, which I actually don't have a really good use case for but everything I would do for that, I would have done a blog post. So I'm like,
right.
But I can kind of see it as like a management thing. So I'm going to share my screen again, like just in terms of like, because, wait, where do I? Okay, so I made this team page because Liam had that post about the system, and then that's why I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this out. So this is my liquid code. I don't know if it's too small, but this is like for the team. So this was the for loop that just does this. But then I was like, can I put it into like an actual
And can you pull up the meta object too when you have a chance so that we can see kind of like how you've got it built out? Or I guess you can do it directly from here too, because right? Or are you saying?
Yeah. Well, I can do. Oh yeah. Let's see. I like haven't been edit meta field, or no, probably.
Yeah, the list and then meta field value because it would be the list that you're using.
Yeah. But that's the meta field.
Okay.
But the meta object. So it's like let's go here. So it would be like team member is like the meta field object. So then you can just add anything. I was like name, title. I had description twice because I actually forgot that I put description the first time. Like photo.
Been there.
I was like, it's not worth it. But then I have like meta object inception, where it's like this gallery also too, because I screwed up the first time. Which is like a list of meta objects. And then also the about is also a list of meta objects. So it's like meta object inception.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. Like I said, that it's hard for me to get to because it's like, oh, this is so incredibly flexible, and being able to reference meta fields and meta objects from within a meta object is just kind of, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I remember so one of my coding teachers once told me store things in the database in the smallest sort of reasonable way you can. So for instance, money I always store in cents because it's easier to like divide it than like figure out, like it's easier to just work from the smallest unit. So I kind of have that same mentality with meta objects where it's like go with the smallest unit, but you don't want it to be so small that then it's just a meta field again,
Right.
So if you go, so that is like, oh, and then the color, I was just playing around with it to see if it would connect, how it connects with in the editor. But so then if I go to gallery card, then this is like has an image, but then also like heading and text, right? So it's like got all the information that it would need for one thing. And then the same with the FAQs, the simple FAQ, which is like just the question and the info. And I match it. So now I've come to realize doing this a number of times is like I want to match it to the info that's available on the block, in the block level of the section.
Gotcha.
So see like the block level here, this image, title, link. I don't have a link, and then like the border color. So then and this is like that thing where you connect the list. So if I just remove it, just to show how it works again. So you go connect dynamic source up here, and then the list here, and then it creates the 3. But then it shows this icon rather than the other one. So you can always just change it here to the member photo. So now it's
nice.
Yeah. So that's another thing. It's like if it doesn't auto connect the proper way, you can change the way it connects.
Yeah, and so this is once you grok this is so easy for a merchant to like just be able to go in here and like, oh, here's all the data, and now I can just connect it as a dynamic source, and then bam, like that's easy.
Okay, so again, for those that are either listening and not watching, or for those that are having trouble following along, can you just give the 30,000 foot level of what you just demonstrated?
Okay, so basically I made a meta object for team members. So each team member is a meta object. And then I created a meta field on a page, a team page, which is a list of those meta objects. So then I added the 3 meta objects. And then just in a menu, like a link icon menu, with each block in that is like a menu item. So I connected the meta field as a menu item, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we have a section for this link menu icons, and then under each individual one are blocks for these, in which case that can be linked up as a dynamic source to the meta objects. as long as they
Yeah.
have fields that match.
Yeah.
So that's where it's easy for merchants, instead of there's not a whole lot of back and forth or even custom coding that you're having to do as a dev, right? Where we're building out these meta objects and we're referencing them with Liquid in the code. You don't necessarily have to do that as long as you're doing it so that way it's going to match up to a block that they could basically loop through and connect as a dynamic source. The same as you would a meta field. Now you can also connect the meta objects as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is like now like coloring the way I build design packs, because I'm like building it so that it will work with meta objects and meta fields like this. So I'm kind of like doing it both ways. I'm like building something and then I'm like, how would I connect? Like, how would it work with meta objects? And then I'm like making sure that it sort of works.
So I see this too as kind of a thing where even theme devs would want to start creating almost these meta object kind of like templates for people, or outlines of like create this kind of a meta object, and you can create this really dynamic kind of type thing, because we know this links up well to this block that we have in this section. And so if you kind of give it this set of data, it's going to hook up to this really, really well.
It's true. This is another thing I'm also thinking for design packs, but I'm trying to like work out the best way to do it that's going to be user friendly, intuitive.
I said theme devs, but you know, you're the app creator here that does custom sections, extending themes. So you know, I was talking at you really, but you know, I'm sure you're already working on this. So.
I am. I'm just trying to think of like the best way to do. Like, I don't want to just put something out that's sort of like not ideal and then have to backtrack later. So, but anyway, so now this is just a link menu, and this is actually just a regular page. But then when you click into each one, because now I can't remember. Oh yeah, the URL is actually the system reference somehow. I actually don't know. I just did this, so I'm like, I'll have
just a showcase for this, yeah.
Yeah. So that, and then the color, I just wanted to play with the color, so each one has its own color. But then when you go into this, is actually the meta object template.
Oh wow, yeah.
So you can see here that all that information. This is like the first meta object. This is the list. So each card is like one meta object for this like gallery. And then each FAQ is one of these FAQs. So then if I go into another one, you can see that these cards are different, and there's like only 2 FAQs versus 3. So I don't know like where you would use this over a blog post necessarily, but I guess like a team member one was the best one I could come up with. And then the thing that's good is all you have to do is create the meta object, and it'll automatically update.
Right.
So it seems like, I mean, before meta objects and all this, you could have done this, but you would have used a blog post and or hard-coded more of the information. It would have been harder for the merchant to make changes.
Or just had a slew of meta fields. Well,
right.
Yeah.
But then a benefit to this approach not only does it make it more extensible, but now you can take that same definition and use it in other contexts and still have all that data about the team member.
Yeah.
Well, and if you could go back to the meta object, Trudy, too, just to take a look at, you know, all the ones that we're using for team members here. But just to take a look at, you know, these would all be like individual meta fields you have to link up to those posts. And so instead, though, we have like one point of entry here to all this custom data that now can be extended, instead of, okay, this blog post, you know, like we talked about, you only have like 20 meta fields that you can pin if you're just using the online store editor or not, maybe like a third-party meta fields app. And so then you're having to go to a page and drop into this like just big long list of all these different meta fields that you'd have to build out for this.
And then the other thing is like here, so I have like the gallery and I have 3 photos, but I can just go in and select like another entry, and that entry is like all, like I only have to enter that information once, but it's like reusable for like other use, like for anywhere essentially in the store now.
I'd be very curious to hear from Shopify engineering in terms of how they do the backend on this, in terms of the data serialization to support this kind of behavior, because it's pretty fascinating. The flexibility they give you.
And that's why I say think of it as an object, because it is like its own thing. Like this like team like each one of these entries is like its own object that
Mhm.
can be just used anywhere, really.
And also the nice thing, that update in editor 2, if you go into a team member in there, it tells you where that meta
Oh
object is being
yeah.
referenced. Like that
Yeah,
is
yeah,
huge. I
yeah,
love that they're actually
Oh,
doing
that's
this
nice.
now.
yeah. Oh, and then okay, just as like a last thing, because this reminded me like the laptop. Um, let me see if I have. Maybe I just have to go back in here. Another, and this is a meta field thing, but having meta fields on the um, variant level has also changed my life. I feel like I've always loved the variants, but and I had this is like a sort of fake version of what I did for a client because they had this thing in their design where they're like, oh, we just want these like icons that have the specs for each type of thing. And then
Hmm.
like they opened it up and it was a modal like this. And I was like,
Okay.
I don't know how I'm going to build this. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's just like too much. Um, but then we just had released the modal, which you can attach with like a link. Like if I go here, like there's a link trigger, so you can just
Hmm.
like connect it to a link. So I just had to make some modifications, but I essentially added a link trigger to the variant. This would only work if you only have one option. It would get,
Hmm.
but and then uh, put in like this little icon with like custom coding,
Hmm.
and then I just had this, and then this is just like a page. I just connected it to like an actual page.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is such a clean, user-friendly like way to do this for something that I was like, this is literally insane, and I don't know how I'm going to build it. So yeah, so the meta field. Oh, and I guess like also you could have like meta field specific information. So like if you
Hmm.
change, like it would have like its own description for meta fields. But yeah, I feel like the variant meta field was the other thing that really changed my life.
Yeah, that's handy because otherwise, I mean, most of it, in addition to trying to get around the 100 variant limit, like a lot of times you're just trying to like, how can we break this SKU down more simply so we can get around having to mess with playing around with variants just because that always severely complicates everything. So yeah, the
Yeah,
having variant metafields has been very nice.
yeah. But yeah, so I think yeah, so the meta object templates, I feel like there's going to be a lot of ideas coming forth in the future, but I don't have that many good use cases for it yet. But
It's
it does.
coming though. It's
But
coming.
yeah, and I feel like the meta objects, it's like it made things that you could kind of do in a hacky way with coding now
Hmm.
sort of more accessible to everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Once we figure out how to actually access them properly.
Yeah, it's true. That is like
Awesome. Well, I feel like this might be a good transition point, or is there anything? I mean, we could talk about meta objects for forever, and I still
forever.
wouldn't
Yeah.
understand most of it. Is there any last thing you want to make sure to impart upon our listenership, or should we go on to the picks of the week?
Well, I'm gonna make a really long like work in progress blog post that's just has all
Yeah,
this information so that
Love
just
it.
even for me to reference. But yeah, it there needs to be like one place where all this information is, I think.
that would be amazing.
And we will have that linked up as
Yeah,
well
by
because
the time
I'll
this
just
comes out.
everything that Trudy puts out, I just bookmark. Like that's it.
Me too, or put like a weekly. So, all right, transition.
Whoa.
Sorry, I keep doing. All right, so let's go on to their next topic, which is the change log. Here
Ooh,
we cover things that
change
have
log.
changed in the log of Shopify this week. So, Taylor, you got a bunch of items on here. You want to touch on them real quick?
Yeah, I'll just hit a couple of these real fast. I'll share my screen for those of you that can't actually see my screen. I'll do my best to describe these while we're walking through them here. So, and I shared the wrong screen, so that's exciting.
Ooh.
I'm sorry. Apparently, I still have training wheels on here. So, the new liquid section properties and default lazy loading for image tags. This is a huge performance win and
Oh
just super nice in
yeah.
general. I imagine Trudy's already like throwing stuff together in here for design packs and everything else that she's working on.
Anne is for sure.
Oh, and is yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Anne. That's all these some of these changelog updates, huh? It's like, oh no, now I have to
Yeah.
refactor all this stuff. So the nice thing is, before, like, some of us might be doing something for, above the fold, below the fold, lazy loading images and stuff like that for performance reasons. Now there's actually a way that there's a new section.index property here where we can reference, is this section the first section? And if it is, then we can instead choose to preload or eagerly load images, so that way they load faster. It's one of the main metrics when it comes to speed optimization is this one called largest contentful paint, and it's typically targeting that biggest asset or whatever in the above the fold. Most of the time it's something like a hero image or whatever kind of type thing. So doing something like this, before, what I would do at least is I'd have like just a Boolean value to, like, hey, if this is above the fold, check mark this, because then it would load an image tag that doesn't have lazy loading instead. So, we'd build in lazy loading by default, but then have a way to escape it. The problem with that is if the content changes, the merchant would have to remember to, uncheck that box. Otherwise, we're losing some of our performance there. So this will now do this automatically or dynamically, provided you're doing something in here. The performance team over at Shopify wrote a very handy little snippet here on how to actually code this in. So we'll link this up in the show notes, but basically you're just going to go through and check to see whether or not it is that first section. And if it is, then you can do some preloading. But otherwise, if you're using the image tag, it will automatically lazy load by default, which is also a performance win in general. So that's
cool.
Awesome. Another additional positive update for folks, the Storefront API now supports product bundles. So they're doing a lot with bundles here on Shopify and stuff, everything from rolling out, a native bundles app. And then, the Storefront API just opening up more and more. So I see folks, the use case for bundles and stuff like that becoming a much bigger deal for folks. So, as before, I haven't tried to play around with this at all necessarily, but a lot of things that we're doing, I would typically do is something like using the, the cart API and stuff like that to grab a bunch of products to throw in the cart at once. So something like this could be really handy and useful to use. So interested to see what this looks like for the future. And I liked this one in here. By the time this rolls out, people will have seen this before. I don't know if y'all have seen this, but it's enhancements, they call them. It's a quality of life update, which I think is really fun. But it is pretty nice. I don't know if y'all have seen this. But basically, in the customizer and stuff, this just looks way better. This is also really nice. So when you're using range, it was super annoying. Sometimes I have to, drag and slide this or whatever, but now you can actually input and it'll accept a value here. As well, provided it's a valid one and stuff. So
nice.
That is very nice. And then the select setting as well. It's just kind of a little prettified a little bit instead of the drop downs. So it's pretty nice. Nothing that devs have to do. Like I said, they called it a quality of life update. So,
I do like
it.
I think it is nice.
Yeah. Yep. So. And that's probably enough of those. So I won't go too deep into that. I've obviously got more, but we'll save them for the next one. So just changelog updates that are impacting our lives for the better. So thank you, Shopify, for keeping on working on stuff.
You're right.
It's true.
Excellent. All right. So our last section before we wrap up for this week is our pick of the week. Trudy, have you had time to think of a new one, or do you need a few moments? We can go first if you haven't.
I need a few moments.
Okay. I'm going to go first since Taylor just shared the changelog stuff. So my pick of the week actually is a book. It's called Life in Code, A Personal History of Technology by Ellen Ullman. And she has a bunch of basically journal entries from her career as a programmer that she wrote. And it's it's very interesting and kind of prescient too. This one she wrote back in 1994, I thought described the state of life here very, very well. Real quick. So she says, we're talking about computers. Again, this is 94, right? Before any of this had kind of happened. She said, all services are waiting for us on our telephones, our televisions, computers. Midnight, dawn, day, sleep, or order a pizza. It no longer matters exactly what we do when. We don't need to involve anyone else in the satisfaction of our desires. We don't even have to talk. We get our services when we want them, free from the obligations of regularly scheduled time. That's just one little snippet, but a lot of it's on the technology side of what she did and just the systems she was working with. So if you like that kind of stuff, particularly if you like to look back into the kind of the earlier years of sort of modern computing and the internet, it's a definitely recommend that book.
Nice. Solid. Always looking for good book recommendations.
How about you, Taylor? What you got?
For me, so I was going to recommend a app, service, I don't know, whatever, called Screen.studio. So if you're putting little video presentations together like me, or whatever, I've been using this one. I typically use OBS to record longer version, like screen recordings and stuff like that. But these ones are really nice for like real quick short ones. You might have seen a lot of these for people demoing like apps and things of that nature. They get these cool, like, zoom in, transition effects or whatever. And so it's nice just to be able to record and not have to worry about it. It follows like mouse tracking to do the nice little zoom ins and stuff. It's a really simple basic editor and stuff like that. So this is a paid thing, obviously. But I thought it was really, really nice. It's made my life a little bit easier for quick little spin ups. I did a little quick video for the Shopify CLI console command. And when that came out, they expanded it to where you can actually get Metaobjects and metafields in it now. And so I used Screen.studio to record. It was really handy. So if you do have to do these, or if you're working on an app or a theme and you just want something nice and smooth, not have to worry about editing and post a whole lot, it's pretty handy. So check it out.
Seems like that'd be great even for making content, like help articles if you had an app or something like that where you could do quick little video tutorials.
Yeah, the zoom in is just real nice. It's smooth, and like I don't know how to do that like in Final Cut or whatever. So I'm glad that there's like a little app that just like, oh, you could just drop in a zoom in right here. Cool.
That's right.
I don't have to do anything. Thank you.
Awesome. Trudy?
I feel like, can I just go back to my Canva of
Sure.
Do it.
my Canva hack of making fake product photos?
That's
yes. So and like for people that I don't know, do you want to do a quick demo? It's really fast. I thought it was super cool.
Yeah. Okay. I'll share my screen again. Wait. Share. Oh.
It's cool. I shared the wrong screen earlier even too. So,
So this is just.
so if you're in Canva, you go over to
Elements and then go to generate your own, and then I just do like flat lay of clothing. Yeah, it doesn't take too long either.
I thought it was pretty quick. Yeah.
Should I get to jinx it?
I know. No. Yeah.
So look how good that looks.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, that looks pretty good.
That'll work.
So this is perfect for like product or you're trying to do some quick demos and stuff like that, and you don't want to like find a merchant who you can get permission to like use their images. And I don't know, I was going to say some rules apply when using these images. I'd be interested to see what we can and can't do with some of these, because I know the whole AI and image generation and stuff like that, I know there's a lot going on with that. But this is super
mislead anyone,
super handy.
But just I mean, I feel like you can't use it for real product photos, but if you're just like trying to display something and you need something, but I'm gonna try mascara again because I just feel like it cannot.
Well, give it
or it might do eyes.
Could you do maybe give it more like mascara makeup products or something?
Oh yeah.
So I think this is perfect for something where like you do demos, and instead of going to something like Unsplash or Pexels or
it did.
It worked?
Yeah.
What is Shopify's Burst? Is that?
Oh yeah,
is that
Burst.
Theirs?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to find something that works, you could just generate a couple of quick images. Because sometimes, like when you're creating content like this, you're like, bam, you're done. What happened?
Yeah, and I feel like for actual product photos, like I'll be like men's coat or something. Like you can't find really good just like plain photos that work as a product photo on Unsplash and those types of things, because they're usually like lifestyle photography. But you're like, oh look, product photos. There we go.
Nice.
This is
Yeah.
super good call out.
How did my picture end up in there?
I was gonna say that looks just like Karl.
It does, yeah. I used to have that exact jacket. Anyway.
Yeah, so I feel like so I mean that's made my life so much easier when making like templates and fake stores and stuff.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Well, I think with that, we'll call it a wrap. Trudy, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
My
Yes,
head is
thank
still
you for
spinning. I'm
having
going to
me.
go back and re-listen to this a few times, I think. And
Taylor,
Taylor, it's always good to see your smiling face. And for those of you that joined us by audio, you do yourself a favor, come back and look at the video version, because I think this one is one where you'll really benefit from seeing what was happening on the screen. But yeah, it's great to talk to you guys all, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you on the interwebs.
Yes, you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.